Welcome to today's webinar, Thriving Together in Tough Economic Times with Data-First Marketing Automation. I'm Heather Knudsen, Vice President of Marketing for Ascent 360. It's been a challenging few weeks, but we're happy to virtually be here with all of you today. Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us. With that, I'd like to dive right in, and I'm pleased to introduce our thought leaders who will be joining me today in leading our discussion. Scott Buelter, CEO and President for Ascent 360, is joined by Jason Root, Senior VP of Client Success. Scott is going to kick us off here discussing essential steps you can take right away to segment and maintain authentic communication with your customers. And Jason will be joining us at the latter part of the program to share some specific examples he's seeing on the client front with today's new normal and the impact from COVID-19. Scott, thank you for joining me. And with that, the virtual podium is all yours.
Excellent. Okay, well, thank you very much, Heather. So we're going to dig in. We've got about 30 minutes of content, maybe 28. We're going to try to get some questions at the end, and we'll try to stop on time as well. I know everyone is as busy as they can be, even if things like operations are stopped, and there's the business challenges that we know about. So the core goal today is to talk about a kind of data-first communication strategy that will be effective in this very difficult environment. And to talk a little bit about the environment itself, this chart came out today from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. This is initial jobless claims over the last 50 years or so, and as you can see, the red sections are recessions. So the 2008 recession we can see there, and the initial jobless claims got as high as about 650,000 people. The somewhat shocking and disturbing black line that you see today is 3.2 million people. So this is actually five-fold over anything we've ever seen in the past. So it is an absolutely unique and different environment, and I think we've all got to figure out how do we approach this in really smart ways. So a little bit more on the environment, right? So we know that people have a strong sense of fear for one's health, their job, their family, their friends. There's a low sense of stability or direction. If you'd say to yourself 6 months ago, can I kind of predict what the next 2 or 3 months look like? You probably can. Today, I don't even know that we know what the next 10 days looks like. There's a very low tolerance for hard sell marketing communications, right? So we've seen this ourselves. We've gotten feedback from people that send a kind of a typical email communication, and they very quickly get a lot of feedback and pushback from their audience, from their customer base that says, hey, this is tone deaf. This isn't necessarily what you should be talking about. Your customers' plans have been torn apart, right? Whether they had spring break plans, whether they were, going to come skiing at the end of the year, whether they were, taking some kind of trip or some kind of plans with their family, that's been shut down. People are spending an enormous amount of time on their computers, and that's not just the work from home crowd, right? We're all working from home, but in the evenings, the traffic on the internet has skyrocketed as well. I probably could have included a chart there. It's actually pretty fascinating to look at internet traffic. There's kind of a little need for stuff, status, equipment, travel, and experiences, right? That's not the focus of what's happening right now. There very much is a kind of the back to the basics discussions. Certainly, the shortage of toilet paper is a constant conversation and sometimes joke. And then people have time for contemplation, consideration, and reflection. And so you might say, hey, look, this is a really rough environment, and that environment is feeling dismal. But I'd like to consider some of the elements that we see in this, right? And that is, we see health, we see family, we friends. There is kind of knowledge of customers, and people know what those are, and they are them. The idea that people are on their computers is something we need to consider here. Let's consider the basics. And then finally, this kind of idea of contemplation, consideration, and reflection. So digging in, right? This is just the first step. And my guess is a lot of you have taken care of this, and that's just adjust what is in flight, right? So you've got a lot of data-driven activities happening right now. and you're going to need to stop some of them. You're going to need to augment some of them. Automations that have become invalid, right? Your reservation is 10 days away with, upsell, cross-sell sort of stuff. That should be changed. Now, the odds are decent that a lot of those have already been canceled, but it's possible that people haven't even been able to get through to your phone line. They're trying to get through. When they do, they're going to end up canceling. But if they right now are starting to get emails that say, hey, we know you're arriving in 10 days, when they know they're not, that isn't going to feel good. There's a lot of language that probably starts to feel offensive right now, right? Don't lose out. Only 2 days left to get a great deal. It's your birthday. Treat yourself to a massage for 20% off. Heather, who actually kicked off this, is very close with her yoga studio. They're doing a fantastic job through this, which is they're actually doing online yoga now. They're sending out tips and all those sort of things. But they did forget to turn off their birthday message. Today is Heather's birthday, and she did get a message that actually said, come into the store and get a discount. And she can't come into the store is actually closed. So she spoke with them about it. So it's a really an honest mistake. And then it's not just email and automations, right? There's a lot of things that you might want to change on various channels. It could be your search ads, could be your Facebook ads, or even the posts you've had, or even things like call center script and call center music. Some of that stuff you certainly want to go address. Here's 2 examples, right? Pinkberry, we miss you. I'm guessing a lot of you have automations set up that, hey, if we haven't seen somebody in 180 days, let's send them a we miss you, and free yoga has been added, and visit Pinkberry, which you can't do. Or hey, here's a suggestion to visit that you're coming to Santa Monica. You can upgrade, you can add breakfasts, and also none of that is true. So that's kind of the basics. Here's kind of another piece of basics, which is just know your audience. And this is some kind of contemplation of data and how it looks. So what we know is that 80% of your future revenue is going to come from 20% of your existing customers. And this is a donut of a client who, in this case, it's 72%. This is kind of a well-founded, and if you looked at almost any one of our clients, you'd see metrics that look very close to this, right? Where that black piece is 20% of people, and the size is effectively how much they spend. And so why does this matter? And what we're going to suggest is, as the economy starts to open up, as people begin to buy again, as they're thinking about booking again, as they're planning, they're going to do that from companies they know, that they trust, and that they respect. And so we already know that your customers know you. I think the plan is, well, how do you keep them in the category of trust and respect? And then maybe on the know piece, how do you stay kind of top of mind, right? How do you communicate now about things that you're planning, about the future, without coming off as offensive? A couple other statistics here that I think are quite meaningful is that 5 to 20% is really the probability of sending to a new prospect. So people, and is probably amplified as people start buying again, the probability of selling to an existing customer is 60 to 70%. And then we know that loyal customers are worth 10 times their first purchase, right? So these are the folks that are going to come and make purchases. And so I think what we would suggest is, think about segmenting, think about how do you actually think about your customer base, right? They're not all the same, they're not all equal, and they've got aspects about them. So, this is just some kind of example data of a kind of top customer versus bottom customer. And in this case, and this is real data, this client's top customer annual spend is 880 versus 25 for the bottom, 1.8 thousand, almost 2,000 for lifetime spend versus 110, 4 times higher for kind of emails opened, and then recency of purchase as well. Right, top customers are making those purchases. And again, this is just another look at that kind of 80-20, which in this case is 70-30. So let's figure out how to focus on the green. And maybe the blue as well, right? That's the majority of revenue. But let's think about it from segments. And and this is, where you start to think about your own business, but we think about, if you're a resort pass holders, or we think about, people who have visited or visited this year, or even visited multiple times this year. Certainly repeat customers, loyal customers, high spenders, those sorts of things. Now, it doesn't necessarily need to be these segments as well. You can also say, well, I want to know people. So I want to know people with children, and speak to them specifically. We know that they're not in school. We know all those sorts of things. But the intent is to say, well, let's start building messaging to support those segments. And we'll talk about the messaging in just a minute. But how do we build messaging towards these segments? If you're a jeweler, it might be, watch purchasers, diamond purchasers, things like married versus single, and these are all meaningful at the same time. So let's talk about a couple things well done, right? So the next couple emails I received today, this is well done, right? The subject is help your kids stay connected for free. This is through Audible. I am a customer. I do have kids. School's out. It actually builds my trust and respect. I actually don't know if this is new. My kids actually use my account, but can I let them start using their own account with my books? Maybe. It is good for my kids, and I not only am I thinking about Audible, I'm actually thinking about books that I can go buy for my kids. This is, I think, less so, right? So first of all, I'm not even sure what Rover is. I'm not a customer. And the messaging just seems absolutely insane to me, right? Usually dogs scoot like that when their anal glands are full and uncomfortable. The good news is most grooms include an anal gland expression. I have no idea what this is. The code there, Fun Facts 20, strikes me as a bizarre coupon code, and I don't even think I'm allowed to go get my dog groomed, or I don't know if someone's coming to my house to groom my dog, but we've got a shelter-in-place law here in Colorado. This may be different, but they certainly should know I'm from Colorado if somehow they got my email, and I'm not sure how they did. So now let's actually talk about messaging, right? That's kind of a segmentation idea, right? And that's what's the appropriate messaging, and how do we talk to folks at this time? And at least I think one thing to consider is just a look in the rearview mirror. And I did have a great conversation with one of our clients who is sending out an email that effectively says, look, we had a great year. It was one of our best snow years. We're sad that it ended, but some stories around people who had good times, all that sort of stuff. Now, this may be where we start to getting into some debate, and I grant you that some people might disagree with this messaging. I tend to find it really refreshing, and it is a feel good, because as much as I've probably watched a little bit too much cable news, I do think back to all the good times that I had on the mountain this year, or I think of the workouts that I had, or the hikes that I've gone on, or all those sort of things that we can talk about that are positive, and that can be from the perspective of retail, or resort, or brand, or just about any industry. Great memories were made, and I think it's also refreshing to talk about, well, look, we've had to make changes as well, right? Everyone's human. They know that you're in business. They know that you are a business. And I think you can start talking about, hey, look, we are closed, but we do hope to reopen. And then you can start kind of setting the tone for, what do we talk about as we start to get back open again? And that's this kind of like, let's think about the future. Let's set a little bit of vision, and here's some kind of future planning, right? I love this one, 4 places I'm dreaming about for later in 2020. And this is, this is, kind of tune out of 24/7 COVID coverage. And people do want to start thinking about summer planning and next season. You can think about what gear is coming out in the fall. You can think about, what fun you could have, Memorial Day or that sort of thing. Summer adventures. It's early enough. If it's done well, it'll come across well, and you're staying top of mind. This is probably pretty obvious, and I think people are doing this, but I don't just mean the, hey, this is, our stance on COVID, but there are event cancellations, location closure, updates on suspended seasons, expected plans for reopening. Certainly there's options for online and home delivery. And I think the one really critical thing to do I imagine everyone is doing this, but I've talked to enough people who are actually pretty unsure of what they're going to do. And that is, look, if you haven't figured out all of the kind of details around how you're going to price when you reopen, how you're going to, give people refunds or rain checks or all those other things, I think you really got to figure that stuff out and start communicating it. And there is a real sense of, hey, I don't really want to figure that stuff out yet because I don't know how deep this is going to get, and I don't know how much I need to cover for those things. But I think it's still a pretty good idea to try to get everything you can figured out and start communicating it. And I think the core thing is that people want to stay informed, right? I'm even doing that within our own company, sending messages to the employees, updating people about what's happening at Ascent, even though we're small enough that we're all talking. But that doesn't mean people don't want to get a sense of how are we actually thinking about this from a macro perspective. I love this one, right? This one, the Outbound Collective. It's informative, it's genuine. The subject is it still okay to go outside? And, read more about how to adventure responsibly in the age of COVID-19. And look, people want to be responsible. People still want to get outdoors. They want to stay healthy. All those things they kind of want to continue. And I think this is just a great email that I enjoyed reading, and it keeps them top of mind in my mind. Next, talk about your values. And we know this is great, right? Your values, your story, your mission is timeless. And I think there's a fair amount that you can talk about here, right? So Smartwell talks about their purpose. We exist to bring comfort, confidence, and community to a life lived outside. Now, it is fair to say that if you're running a restaurant, this sort of stuff is a little bit harder to talk about, with the life outside. But certainly when it's freshness of food or quality or health or those sort of things, there's a fair amount to talk about. I actually did just talk to a bike retailer in the Southeast. And we kicked off the conversation, and they actually talked about like why they started the bike store, and there's actually 8 of them now, and it was absolutely beautiful. And I don't actually remember everything that they said, but they did talk about that. The experience of bicycling is really special to them, and they try to kind of pull people into the experience of bicycling in a way that is very, very friendly, right? They're very much against the kind of walk in and only trust people who are wearing Lycra and look like they, can climb Berthoud in 15 minutes. They're trying to do something else. And you can probably talk about your mission, your story, your values endlessly right now without offending people. And it'll probably make people even feel good, and you're staying top of mind, and you can start transition into the sales process. And now let's actually talk about like just softening the hard sell. So we've seen the hard sell. Every time I open my Gmail account, I'm a little bit shocked at seeing, things like, only 2 hours left in our flash sale, and, buy now or lose out. And I actually don't think that messaging is playing out well. We don't get the sense that it's playing out well from people that we talk to. Now, to be fair, we don't exactly see the numbers, but what we do know is that people are still buying. We see that through our own clients and talking to our own clients. People are still buying next year's ski passes. People are still buying online. People are still buying hard goods and soft goods, and it may be, hey, there's discounts to be had. They feel like they're in a good position. So on some level, we're all in this to make a living, and we can't stop selling. Let's just change the messaging up a little bit. And this is one I really like from a client of ours, and it has a little bit of both, right? It's a little bit edgy, but it starts with talking about COVID relief, right? The subject line, oh, I didn't include it here and I apologize, but this is tightly segmented, right? It's going to customers. It talks about online. It talks about their COVID relief message. They are giving 10% back to actually the local community, but they're still trying to sell their product. Now, it might be because I'm a customer and I like this business and I've bought from this business that I myself don't find any offense here at all. I like it. It may be, if you don't really know who these guys are, you look at it and say, this isn't perfect for me. This is another one that I think actually went over pretty well also. And this is a local Colorado sausage company. I do know the owner. And this is, they're announcing reduced shipping minimums to help combat coronavirus. No need to go to the store. It's simple, it's direct. They're certainly selling, but it doesn't strike me as offensive. It does suggest that, hey, they've got some methods to continue sales while you can't go necessarily to some of the stores, especially some of the stores that they sell out of. And I know they sell to a lot of restaurants. That piece of their business is certainly challenged. And just as a note, if you guys have examples of things that you're doing or that you've seen work really well, please send them to me. I'll add them in and we'll send out this slide deck if that would be helpful. So now let's actually talk about what are our clients doing, and we've got Jason Root on the line here as well. Jason, I know you've been working with all of our clients, hearing stories, people kind of telling you what people are doing, what is working. Do you want to talk about some of these?
Sure, Scott, thank you. Yeah, first I just want to mention to everyone that, as Scott mentioned, we understand the challenges that you're going through, and it's a challenging time for all of us. And if you're working with one of our client success managers here at Ascent 360 already, don't hesitate to reach out and talk to them through some of these strategies and brainstorm on an approach and a method that you might want to take with maintaining a rapport with your customers in what feels like an unusual circumstance. So I wanted to stress that. And then, yeah, I did have some examples I wanted to share. They follow fairly closely with what Scott has covered and some of the examples he shared. But these are real use cases that we are either seeing and doing already with our clients, or we are at least discussing with them as some of the best practices that we've been sharing. And the first one is it is for customers and it is a revenue play, but there's this sense of community and outreach by doing a donation to COVID-19 relief efforts. And we feel like that's a very strong play and something worth considering. Another strategy that we are discussing with our clients is the idea of looking a little bit further out. We know that people may not have a great need today or may not be able to use a product or service that they're buying today this week, but they may need something a little bit further out, or they may need to purchase some things and they've got limited access. So for example, a gift card for someone who maybe has a birthday a month or two out, or a product that someone is going to use a month or two out. It's still a reasonable time to talk about that and make that offer known to your customers. Another consideration for what's happening today would be promoting some items that might actually play really nicely for people who are going to be home more than normal. So most of us are probably on some form of shelter in place, and there are a number of products that are ideally suited for being around the home. It could be some outdoor products, perhaps some tools for gardening, or what we're seeing is a lot of demand for just things to keep the family active and engaged and stimulated. So even simple things like games, puzzles, just things that would normally be used around the house, there's a higher demand for those today. And as Scott pointed out, there's nothing wrong with discussing those things. Another consideration you might be thinking about now is at some point we're going to start feeling like we're returning to normalcy. Not sure how far out that'll be, but at some point it's going to feel like, okay, this is feeling normal again. We need to get back to some more of our traditional marketing. Give some thought to a welcome back message or a welcome back marketing campaign. And you might think of it a little bit like a lapsed buyer program, where these people probably won't meet your typical lapsed buyer definition, but it might feel a little bit like a reconnect. And so maybe some wordage around looking forward to seeing you again, or welcome back, with maybe some call to action or incentive to just re-engage once it feels right. And then another consideration for you is to think about sending something out that is just purely informative. Doesn't need to necessarily be revenue generating or have a call to action, but you may have some great content on your website already. You may have some articles or videos or some how-tos that a customer of yours may typically need to nav their way through to find, but it might be worth taking some content that has broad appeal and sending it out proactively and just saying, hey, we know you're not doing things the way you normally might. Here's some information for you about our products or services for you to consider down the road. And it's just a way to maintain that rapport and feel like you're staying connected with them. And by doing that, when it is time for you to reach out in a little bit more of a revenue generating play, it's not like you were gone and absent for 60, 90, 120 days, and all of a sudden these customers are getting bombarded. It's a good way to just sort of maintain a little bit of continuity. And those are some of the marketing campaigns that we're discussing and seeing put into place with our clients, and that we wanted to summarize with you today. And Scott, that's all I had. So
Yep.
I will kick it back to you or Heather.
Awesome. I love it. So, these are our summary thoughts, right? Which is know your audience. You really want to segment tightly, tight to the message. Your customers will be the first one back. Treat them well. People are looking for information. Please be human, right? Reflect on the past, consider the future, and then quietly sell. People are still buying. We can see that in the data. Now we only have a couple minutes left, as noted, 28. Just a couple minutes left. We would love any questions that you have. If we don't have time to get to them now, we will reply to them via email. So, feel free to put them into the question and answer box within this Zoom. Heather, over to you.
Great. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Jason. I do want to be considerate of everyone's time and end right on time today. We have a couple questions that have come in, and if it's cool with you guys, let's personally respond to those. We'll commit to doing that here before the weekend. I want to thank both of you for presenting today. And if Ascent 360 can help your organization during this time, we're here, we're on standby, happy to help you and talk to your customers in a meaningful and authentic way. We're here to help you weather this storm, and if you have a suggestion for a future webinar, I'd love to hear from you personally, and we can work that into our future thought leadership program as well. So with that, remember to follow us on LinkedIn to stay tuned for future virtual events and programming. And with that, I wish you each good health and good day.
Great, thank you.